Maya sat beside her mother's hospital bed, holding her frail hand as the machines beeped softly around them. At just 16 years old, she never imagined this would be their last conversation. Her mother, Sarah, had been battling cancer for 2 years, and despite all the treatments, the disease had won. "Promise me something, Maya," her mother whispered, her voice barely audible. "No matter what happens after I'm gone, remember that you are worth so much more than anyone will ever tell you. You have a bright future ahead of you, sweetheart." Maya nodded through her tears, squeezing her mother's hand tighter. "I promise, Mom, but you're going to get better. The doctor said—" "The doctors have done everything they can," Sarah interrupted gently. "I need you to be strong now. Your stepfather, he's not the same man I married, without me there to protect you." Her voice trailed off as exhaustion took over. 3 days later, Sarah passed away peacefully in her sleep. Maya felt like her entire world had crumbled. Her mother had been her best friend, her protector, and her guide through life. Now she was completely alone with Richard, her stepfather, whom she barely knew despite living in the same house for 4 years. The funeral was small and quiet. Richard stood beside Maya, but she could feel the distance between them growing with each passing hour. Her mother's relatives lived far away, and her biological father had never been in the picture. She was truly on her own now. When they returned home from the cemetery, Richard's demeanor changed immediately. Gone was the grieving widower who had comforted neighbors and accepted condolences. In his place stood a cold, calculating man who looked at Maya as if she were a burden he never wanted. "Listen here, girl," Richard said, loosening his tie and sitting heavily in his favorite chair. "Things are going to be different around here now. Your mother spoiled you rotten, but I won't be doing the same. You want to keep living under my roof, you're going to earn your keep." Maya stared at him in confusion. "What do you mean? This is my home too. Mom always said, 'Your mother isn't here anymore.'" Richard cut her off sharply. "And I never legally adopted you, which means you have no claim to anything in this house. Everything belongs to me now. The house, the car, even the money your mother saved for your college fund." The words hit Maya like a physical blow. Her college fund was supposed to secure her future, the money her mother had carefully saved from her job as a nurse. It was meant to give Maya the education her mother never had the chance to complete. "You can't do that," Maya protested, tears streaming down her face. "That money was for me. Mom worked extra shifts to save it." Richard laughed coldly. "Watch me. You're just a kid with no legal rights here, but I'm not completely heartless. You can stay, but you'll work for your room and board. Consider it preparation for the real world." That very evening, Richard laid out his expectations. Maya would be responsible for all household chores, cooking, cleaning, laundry, grocery shopping, and maintaining the yard. She would continue attending school, but every moment outside of classes belonged to him. No more after-school activities, no more time with friends, and definitely no more dreams of college. "But how will I ever build a future for myself?" Maya asked desperately. "That's not my problem," Richard replied without looking up from his newspaper. "You should have thought about that before your mother decided to die and leave me stuck with you." The cruelty of his words took Maya's breath away. This man had shared a home with her mother for 4 years, had promised to love and cherish her in sickness and in health, yet he spoke about her death as if it were a personal inconvenience. Maya's first week under Richard's new rules was a nightmare. She woke up at 5 in the morning to prepare his breakfast before school, rushed home immediately after classes to start dinner, and spent her evenings cleaning every inch of the house. Her homework suffered, and her grades began to slip for the first time in her life. Her friends at school noticed the change immediately. Emma, her best friend since elementary school, cornered her during lunch on Friday. "Maya, what's going on with you? You look exhausted, you're not returning my calls, and you missed drama club auditions yesterday." Maya wanted desperately to tell Emma everything, but Richard had made it clear that discussing their family arrangements with outsiders would result in her being thrown out on the street. At 16, with no money and nowhere to go, Maya couldn't risk it. "I'm just dealing with some stuff at home since Mom died," Maya said quietly. "I need to take on more responsibilities now." Emma's expression softened with sympathy. "I understand that you're grieving, but your stepdad should be taking care of you, not the other way around. Maybe you should talk to a counselor or—" "No," Maya interrupted quickly. "It's fine. Really. I just need some time to adjust to everything." But it wasn't fine, and Maya knew it would only get worse. Each day, Richard found new ways to make her life more difficult. He criticized her cooking, complained about her cleaning, and constantly reminded her that she was lucky he allowed her to stay at all. The house that had once been filled with her mother's laughter and warmth now felt like a prison. Maya's bedroom, which her mother had helped her decorate with cheerful colors and inspirational posters, became her only refuge. But even there, she could hear Richard moving around downstairs, and the sound filled her with dread about what new demands tomorrow would bring. As Maya lay in bed that first Friday night, staring at a photo of her and her mother taken just 6 months earlier at her 16th birthday party, she made a silent promise. Somehow, some way, she would find a way out of this situation. Her mother had believed in her strength and potential, and Maya refused to let Richard destroy the future her mother had sacrificed so much to secure. She didn't know how long it would take or what it would cost her, but Maya was determined to prove that she was worth so much more than the life Richard had planned for her. 3 months had passed since her mother's death, and Maya's life had transformed into something unrecognizable. What started as earning her keep had evolved into complete servitude. Richard's demands grew more unreasonable with each passing week, as if he were testing how far he could push her before she broke. Maya's daily routine now began at 4:30 in the morning. She would quietly slip out of bed, careful not to make any noise that might wake Richard and trigger his anger. The kitchen became her first stop, where she prepared his breakfast exactly how he liked it. 2 eggs over easy, bacon crispy but not burnt, toast golden brown, and coffee strong enough to wake the dead. While Richard ate and read his morning paper, Maya packed his lunch for work, ironed his clothes for the day, and made sure his briefcase contained everything he needed. Only after he left for his job at the insurance company could Maya grab a piece of toast and rush to catch the school bus. At school, Maya struggled to stay awake during classes. Her teachers began expressing concern about her declining performance, but she always had an excuse ready. Still adjusting to life without Mom became her standard response, and most adults accepted it with sympathetic nods. Her friend Emma wasn't so easily fooled. During their shared biology class, she noticed Maya's hands were red and cracked from constant cleaning with harsh chemicals. "Maya, your hands look terrible." "What happened?" Maya quickly pulled her sleeves down to cover the evidence. "I've been helping with some deep cleaning at home. You know, going through Mom's things." Emma frowned but didn't press further. Maya hated lying to her best friend, but what choice did she have? Who would believe that a respected insurance agent was treating his stepdaughter like an unpaid servant? The afternoons were the hardest part of Maya's day, while other students stayed after school for clubs, sports, or simply to hang out with friends. Maya had to rush home to begin her second shift of work. Richard had given her a detailed list of daily tasks that seemed to grow longer each week. Mondays meant deep cleaning the bathrooms, scrubbing every surface until it sparkled. Tuesdays were for laundry, not just washing and drying, but ironing everything including his underwear and socks. Wednesdays meant cleaning all the windows in the house, inside and out. Thursdays were for grocery shopping and meal preparation for the week. Fridays meant mopping all the floors and vacuuming every carpet. Weekends brought yard work, car washing, and any additional projects Richard decided needed attention. If Maya failed to complete any task to Richard's satisfaction, there were consequences. He discovered that the most effective punishment wasn't physical violence, but taking away the few things that still connected her to her mother. Her mother's jewelry, photo albums, and personal belongings became bargaining chips in Richard's twisted game of control. "The bathroom mirror has streaks," Richard announced one evening, inspecting Maya's work with the intensity of a drill sergeant. "Looks like you don't value your mother's wedding ring as much as I thought." Maya's heart clenched. She had been wearing her mother's simple gold wedding band on a chain around her neck, the only thing that made her feel close to her mother throughout the difficult days. "Please, Richard. I'll clean it again right now. I'll make it perfect." "Too late," he said, holding out his hand. "Maybe next week you'll remember to do things right the first time." With trembling fingers, Maya removed the necklace and placed it in Richard's palm. Watching him lock it away in his bedroom safe felt like losing her mother all over again. The isolation was perhaps the cruelest aspect of Maya's new reality. Richard had made it clear that having friends over was not allowed, and Maya was too exhausted and ashamed to maintain her friendships anyway. How could she explain to Emma why she couldn't go to movies or hang out at the mall? How could she invite anyone to a house where she was treated like hired help? Her grades continued to decline despite her best efforts. When her English teacher, Mrs. Patterson, asked her to stay after class one day, Maya's stomach filled with dread. "Maya, I'm concerned about you," Mrs. Patterson said gently. "Your essay quality has dropped significantly, and I noticed you fell asleep during yesterday's discussion of Romeo and Juliet. I know you're still grieving your mother, but perhaps it would help to talk to the school counselor." Maya forced a smile. "I'm okay, Mrs. Patterson, just having trouble sleeping sometimes. I'll try harder." Mrs. Patterson studied her carefully. Maya could see the teacher wanted to say more, but students were already filing in for the next class period. "My door is always open if you need to talk," Mrs. Patterson said finally. Maya nodded and hurried out, knowing she could never take advantage of that offer. Richard had made it clear that any interference from school officials would result in her immediate removal from the house. The weekends were particularly brutal because Maya had no escape from Richard's constant criticism and demands. He would sit in his recliner, watching television and barking orders like a king commanding his servants. "Maya, this coffee is too weak. Make another pot. Maya, I can see dust on the ceiling fan in the living room. Maya, the grass needs cutting, and don't forget to edge around the flower beds. Maya, what's for dinner? And it better not be that casserole garbage you made last week." Every request was delivered with the same tone of irritation, as if Maya's very existence was an inconvenience he was forced to tolerate. There were no please or thank you, no acknowledgement of the endless hours she spent maintaining his comfortable lifestyle. Maya's breaking point came on a particularly difficult Saturday in October. She had been cleaning the house since dawn, and Richard had found fault with everything she did. The floors weren't clean enough, the laundry wasn't folded properly, and the dinner she prepared was inedible. "I don't know what your mother saw in you," Richard said cruelly, as Maya cleared his barely touched plate. "She always said you were special, but all I see is a lazy, ungrateful girl who can't do anything right." The words cut deeper than any physical blow could have. Maya stood at the kitchen sink, tears streaming down her face as she washed dishes with hands that were raw from cleaning chemicals. In that moment, she realized that Richard wasn't just stealing her labor and her possessions. He was systematically destroying her sense of self-worth. But even in her darkest moment, Maya remembered her mother's final words. "You are worth so much more than anyone will ever tell you." Those words became her lifeline, the only thing standing between her and complete despair. That night, as Maya lay in bed, too exhausted to even cry, she made a decision. She couldn't change her current situation immediately, but she could start planning for her escape. She would need to be smart patient and incredibly careful. But she would find a way to reclaim the future her mother had envisioned for her. The girl who had once dreamed of college and career success wasn't dead. She was just buried under months of abuse and exploitation. Maya was determined to dig her way back to the surface, no matter how long it took. Winter arrived early that year, blanketing the neighborhood in snow that Maya had to shovel from the driveway before dawn each morning. 6 months had passed since her mother's death, and Maya had settled into a rhythm of survival that felt both familiar and suffocating. She moved through her days like a ghost of her former self, completing tasks mechanically while her mind wandered to memories of better times. The turning point came on an unusually quiet Tuesday afternoon. Maya was at the grocery store, carefully, shopping from Richard's detailed list while staying within the strict budget he had given her. Every penny had to be accounted for, and she had learned the hard way that coming home even 50 cents over budget would result in hours of verbal abuse. As she reached for a box of cereal on the top shelf, her worn-out sneaker slipped on the polished floor. Maya fell backward, bringing several boxes crashing down with her. She lay on the cold linoleum for a moment, too exhausted and embarrassed to move quickly. "Oh my goodness. Are you all right?" A warm voice filled with genuine concern made Maya look up. Standing above her was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. She wore a simple blue dress and a name tag that read, "Helen, Store Manager." "I'm fine," Maya said automatically, scrambling to pick up the scattered boxes. "I'm so sorry about the mess." Helen knelt down beside her, helping to gather the items. As their hands touched while reaching for the same box, Helen paused. She looked closely at Maya's appearance, the dark circles under her eyes, the way her clothes hung loosely on her thin frame, the rough condition of her hands. "Honey, when's the last time you had a proper meal?" Helen asked gently. The question caught Maya off guard. She couldn't remember the last time an adult had spoken to her with such kindness. Richard always complained about the cost of groceries, often making comments about how much Maya ate despite the fact that she usually survived on whatever leftovers he didn't finish. "I eat fine," Maya lied, but her stomach chose that moment to growl loudly, betraying her words. Helen's expression grew more concerned. "I'm about to take my break. Would you like to join me for a cup of coffee and a sandwich in the employee break room?" My treat. Maya's first instinct was to refuse. Richard expected her home within an hour of school ending, and any delay would require an explanation she couldn't provide. But something about Helen's genuine warmth made her hesitate. It had been so long since anyone had shown her simple human kindness. "I can't stay long," Maya said quietly. Helen's face lit up with a smile. "That's perfectly fine, dear. Sometimes we all just need a few minutes to catch our breath." The employee break room was small but comfortable, with a round table and chairs. That had seen better days. Helen quickly prepared 2 cups of coffee and pulled a turkey sandwich from the refrigerator, cutting it in half without asking if Maya wanted any. "So, tell me about yourself," Helen said, settling into her chair. "I don't think I've seen you in here before today." Maya took a small bite of the sandwich, trying not to appear too eager despite her hunger. "I usually shop for my stepfather. My mom passed away 6 months ago." "I'm so sorry for your loss," Helen said, and Maya could tell she truly meant it. "That must be incredibly difficult for someone your age. Are you a senior in high school?" "Junior," Maya replied. "I'm 16. Helen nodded thoughtfully. 16 is such an important age. Lots of big decisions coming up about your future. College plans, career goals. What are you interested in studying?" The question pierced through Maya's carefully constructed emotional barriers. Before her mother's death, she had dreamed of becoming a teacher like her favorite English instructor, Mrs. Patterson. She had planned to study education and literature, to inspire young minds the way her mother had always inspired her. "I used to want to be a teacher," Maya said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. But that's not really possible anymore. Helen leaned forward, her expression curious rather than pitying. Why not? You seem like a bright, articulate young woman. I bet you'd make an excellent teacher. Maya felt tears threatening to spill over. My college fund, it's gone, and my grades aren't what they used to be. I have too many other responsibilities now. What kind of responsibilities? Helen asked gently. Maya hesitated. She had been so isolated for months that the urge to confide in someone was almost overwhelming. But Richard's warnings echoed in her mind, reminding her of the consequences of sharing family business with strangers. Just household stuff, Maya said vaguely. My stepfather works hard, so I help out where I can. Helen studied Maya's face carefully. In her 25 years of managing the grocery store, she had developed a keen ability to read people. She saw teenage employees trying to hide problems at home, single mothers stretching budgets to feed their families, and elderly customers who came in just for human contact. Maya reminded her of her own daughter at that age, bright, capable, but carrying burdens too heavy for young shoulders. Maya, Helen said, and Maya was surprised to realize she had mentioned her name during their conversation. I want you to know that sometimes life puts us in situations that feel impossible to escape. But there are always people willing to help if we're brave enough to ask for it. Maya looked up, meeting Helen's eyes directly for the first time. What if asking for help would make things worse? Then we find another way, Helen replied firmly. There's always another way, even when we can't see it yet. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes while Maya finished the sandwich. She couldn't remember the last time food had tasted so good or when she had felt so relaxed in an adult's presence. I should go? Maya said reluctantly, glancing at the clock on the wall. Thank you for the sandwich and coffee, and for being kind to me. Helen reached into her purse and pulled out a business card, writing something on the back before handing it to Maya. This has the store's number on the front, but I wrote my personal cell phone number on the back. If you ever need anything, a ride, a meal, someone to talk to, or help with those household responsibilities, you call me, day or night. Maya stared at the card, hardly believing what she was hearing. You don't even know me. Why would you want to help? Helen smiled warmly. Because 25 years ago, I was a 16-year-old girl who needed help, and a kind woman at my grocery store job saw that I was struggling. She helped me finish high school and apply for college scholarships. Now I'm a store manager with 2 grown children and a comfortable life. Sometimes we help others because someone once helped us. Maya slipped the card into her pocket, feeling like she was carrying a small piece of hope. What if I'm too scared to call? Then you keep the card until you're not scared anymore, Helen said simply. But remember, Maya, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what needs to be done despite the fear. As Maya walked home through the cold winter air, Richard's grocery list in one hand and Helen's business card in her pocket, she felt something she hadn't experienced in months. For the first time since her mother's death, Maya felt like she wasn't completely alone in the world. She didn't know if she would ever be brave enough to call Helen, but knowing that someone cared about her well-being was enough to keep her going for now. The teacher dreams that had seemed impossible just an hour earlier suddenly felt a little more achievable. Maya quickened her pace as she approached the house, mentally preparing for Richard's inspection of her shopping and his inevitable complaints about how long she had been gone. But for once, his criticism couldn't completely erase the warmth she felt from Helen's kindness. Change was coming. Maya could feel it in her bones. She just had to be patient and smart about how she pursued it. Spring arrived with a burst of hope that Maya hadn't felt in almost a year. The snow melted away, revealing the first green shoots of her mother's flower garden that Maya had somehow managed to keep alive despite everything else on her plate. As she knelt in the dirt, carefully tending to the daffodils her mother had planted 2 years earlier, Maya made a decision that would change everything. She pulled Helen's business card from her jacket pocket, where it had lived for the past 3 months. The edges were worn soft from her nervous handling, but the phone number was still clearly visible. Maya had memorized it weeks ago, but had never found the courage to use it. Richard's behavior had grown even more controlling as winter progressed. He had started timing her grocery trips, demanding explanations for any delay. He had also begun checking her backpack when she returned from school, claiming he needed to make sure she wasn't wasting time on frivolous activities when she should be focused on her household duties. The final straw came on a rainy Thursday evening in March. Maya had been battling a fever for 2 days, but hadn't dared tell Richard she was sick. She knew he would see illness as another form of laziness, another excuse to avoid her responsibilities. While preparing his dinner, Maya's fever-weakened grip caused her to drop a plate, which shattered across the kitchen floor. Richard's rage was swift and terrifying. "You clumsy little brat! That was part of your mother's good china set. Do you have any idea how much those plates cost?" Maya knelt on the floor, carefully picking up the pieces while apologizing repeatedly. Her hands shook from fever and fear, making the task even more difficult. "I'm sorry, Richard, it was an accident. I'll be more careful." "Sorry doesn't fix anything," he snarled, standing over her menacingly. "Since you obviously don't appreciate nice things, you'll eat off paper plates from now on. And to make sure you learn the value of what you destroyed, you'll work extra hours this weekend to pay for a replacement." Maya's breaking point wasn't Richard's anger or even the unfair punishment. It was the realization that she was living in exactly the kind of situation her mother had tried to protect her from her entire life. Her mother had worked 2 jobs to keep them in a safe apartment, had turned down dates with men who showed even the slightest sign of controlling behavior, and had always emphasized Maya's worth and potential. That night, after Richard had gone to bed, Maya crept downstairs to the kitchen phone. Her hands trembled as she dialed Helen's number, praying the older woman would remember her and wouldn't be angry about being called so late. "Hello?" Helen's voice was alert despite the late hour. "Helen? This is Maya, from the grocery store. You gave me your card 3 months ago." "Maya!" Helen's voice immediately filled with warmth and concern. "I'm so glad you called, honey. Are you all right? You sound upset." The kindness in Helen's voice broke down Maya's carefully constructed walls. Through tears and whispered words, she told Helen everything. The endless chores, the verbal abuse, the stolen college fund, the isolation from friends, and the constant fear that walking on eggshells still wouldn't be enough to avoid Richard's wrath. Helen listened without interruption, occasionally making soft sounds of sympathy and encouragement. When Maya finished her story, there was a long pause before Helen spoke. "Maya, sweetheart, what you're describing isn't a family situation, it's exploitation. No 16-year-old should be responsible for maintaining an entire household while being verbally abused and cut off from normal teenage activities. You're being treated like an unpaid servant in your own home." Hearing an adult validate her experiences was overwhelming. Maya had begun to doubt her own perceptions, wondering if she was being dramatic or ungrateful. Richard had a way of making her feel like his demands were reasonable and her resistance was selfish. "But where would I go?" Maya whispered. "I don't have any family, and I can't support myself. At least here, I have a roof over my head." "There are options," Helen said firmly. "First, I want you to know that you have a place to stay if you need it immediately. My husband and I have a spare bedroom, and we've been through the process of becoming emergency foster parents. But more importantly, there are legal ways to get control of your college fund and establish your independence." Helen explained that, while Richard had legal ownership of the house and most of the assets, the college fund might be a different story. If Maya's mother had set it up as a trust or educational savings account with Maya as the beneficiary, Richard wouldn't have the right to use that money for his own purposes. "Do you remember where your mother kept important papers?" Helen asked. Maya thought carefully. "She had a filing cabinet in her bedroom closet. Richard moved it to the basement after she died, but I don't think he threw anything away." "That's our starting point," Helen said. "But Maya, I need you to understand that this process will take time and careful planning. You can't just disappear overnight without putting yourself in danger. We need to be smart about this." Over the next several weeks, Helen became Maya's secret lifeline and strategic partner. They developed a plan that would allow Maya to gradually document Richard's treatment while secretly preparing for her departure. Helen introduced Maya to her daughter-in-law, Jessica, who worked as a social worker specializing in youth services. Jessica explained Maya's legal rights and helped her understand the process of becoming an emancipated minor. She also connected Maya with free legal aid services that could help recover her college fund. The plan was complex, but achievable. Maya would need to gather documentation of her mother's assets, including bank statements and insurance policies. She would also need to document Richard's abuse and exploitation, including photographs of her living conditions and a detailed journal of his treatment. Most importantly, Maya needed to maintain her grades and her relationship with trusted adults at school who could serve as character witnesses if legal proceedings became necessary. Mrs. Patterson, Maya's English teacher, became an unexpected ally in this process. When Maya finally found the courage to confide in her about her situation, Mrs. Patterson was horrified, but not surprised. "I knew something was wrong," Mrs. Patterson said during their private meeting after school. "Your whole demeanor changed after your mother passed away, and your academic performance has been concerning me for months." Mrs. Patterson agreed to serve as Maya's academic advisor, helping her catch up on assignments and providing extra support to bring her grades back up to college preparatory levels. She also began documenting Maya's situation from an educational perspective, noting the signs of abuse and neglect she had observed. The most difficult part of the plan was the waiting. Maya had to continue living with Richard, fulfilling his demands and enduring his criticism while secretly working toward her freedom. There were nights when she wanted to call Helen and beg to be rescued immediately, but she knew that patience was essential for long-term success. Maya began keeping a detailed journal hidden in her school locker documenting every instance of abuse and exploitation. She took photographs of her living conditions, her damaged hands from cleaning chemicals, and the endless list of chores Richard assigned her. She also began saving small amounts of money whenever possible, taking on odd jobs for neighbors when Richard was at work. Helen helped Maya research college scholarships for students in difficult circumstances, including programs specifically designed for young people who had experienced family trauma or financial hardship. Maya's dream of becoming a teacher was slowly becoming achievable again. As spring turned toward summer, Maya felt stronger and more confident than she had in months. She still endured Richard's daily demands and criticism, but now she had hope. She had allies. Most importantly, she had a plan. The girl who had been treated like a slave was preparing to reclaim her identity as a young woman with unlimited potential. The transformation wouldn't happen overnight, but Maya was finally ready to fight for the future her mother had always envisioned for her. The morning Maya had been planning for finally arrived on a humid Tuesday in late June. She woke up at her usual 4:30, but instead of beginning her daily routine of servitude, she lay still in bed, listening to Richard's heavy footsteps, moving around the house as he prepared for work. Today was different. Today, everything would change. Over the past 3 months, Maya had meticulously prepared for this moment. With Helen's guidance and Jessica's legal expertise, she had gathered all the evidence needed to build a case against Richard. Hidden in her school locker were copies of her mother's will, insurance policies, and most importantly, documentation proving that the college fund had been established as an irrevocable trust with Maya as the sole beneficiary. Richard had been stealing from her for nearly a year, Maya heard Richard's car pull out of the driveway at exactly 7:15, just like every other workday, but instead of starting breakfast preparations, she immediately called Helen. "It's time," Maya said simply when Helen answered the phone. "Are you sure you're ready?" Helen asked gently. "Once we start this process, there's no going back to the way things were." Maya looked around her bedroom, taking in the faded, inspirational posters her mother had helped her hang, the bookshelf filled with novels she no longer had time to read, and the window that faced the garden where her mother's flowers bloomed each spring. This room held her childhood memories, but it had also become a prison. "I'm ready," Maya said with more conviction than she had felt in months. "I can't live like this anymore." Helen and Jessica arrived within an hour, accompanied by Officer Martinez from the local police department's Youth Services Division. Maya had met Officer Martinez 2 weeks earlier when Jessica arranged a preliminary interview to document Maya's situation. The officer had been kind but thorough, explaining that while Richard's treatment was clearly abusive, building a legal case would require substantial evidence. Maya had provided that evidence in abundance. Her detailed journal documented months of verbal abuse, impossible work demands, and financial exploitation. Photographs showed her living conditions, including the basement room where Richard had moved her belongings after deciding her mother's former bedroom should become his home. Office. Character statements from Mrs. Patterson and Helen painted a picture of a bright teenager whose potential was being systematically destroyed. The most damning evidence was financial. Jessica's investigation had revealed that Richard had transferred money from Maya's college fund into his personal accounts, claiming it was reimbursement for Maya's living expenses. However, detailed calculations showed that the amount he had taken far exceeded any reasonable cost for housing and feeding a teenager, especially considering the extensive unpaid labor Maya provided in return. "Maya, I need you to pack only essential items right now," Officer Martinez explained as they stood in her bedroom. "Clothes, personal documents, and anything with significant sentimental value. We'll arrange for you to collect the rest of your belongings later, under police supervision." Maya moved through her room methodically, packing the few things that truly mattered. Her mother's jewelry, which she had secretly retrieved from Richard's safe, using the combination she had observed him entering. Family photographs that chronicled her childhood with her mother. The books her mother had given her for birthdays and holidays. Her school supplies and the journal where she had documented her dreams before Richard had tried to destroy them. As Maya packed, Helen and Jessica worked, with Officer Martinez to secure the house and gather additional evidence. They photographed the extensive chore lists Richard had posted throughout the house, the cleaning supplies that had damaged Maya's hands, and the sparse conditions of her basement room compared to the comfortable master bedroom Richard occupied. 11:30, Maya stood in the living room she had cleaned countless times, surrounded by the 3 adults who had helped her plan this escape. She felt a strange mixture of relief and terror. Relief that her ordeal was finally ending, but terror about what came next. "What if he comes after me?" Maya asked, voicing the fear that had kept her trapped for so long. Officer Martinez's expression was serious but reassuring. "Richard will be served with a restraining order today at his workplace. He's prohibited from contacting you or coming within 500 feet of your location. Additionally, we'll be filing charges for financial exploitation of a minor and emotional abuse. He won't be in a position to retaliate," Jessica added. "We've also been in contact with the bank that manages your trust fund. They've frozen Richard's access and are beginning the process of returning the stolen money to your account. It will take some time, but you'll get your college fund back." Maya felt tears streaming down her face, but for the first time in months, they were tears of relief rather than despair. "I can't believe this is really happening. I was starting to think I would be trapped forever." Helen wrapped Maya in a warm hug. "You were never trapped, sweetheart. You just needed the right people to help you find the key to your prison." As they prepared to leave, Maya took one last look around the house that had been her home for 4 years. The kitchen where she had cooked thousands of meals, the living room she had cleaned until her hands bled, the stairs she had climbed while carrying loads of laundry that never seemed to end. These rooms held the worst year of her life, but they also contained memories of her mother that Maya would always treasure. The drive to Helen's house was quiet, with Maya staring out the window as familiar neighborhoods passed by. She was leaving behind the only home she had known since her mother's remarriage, but she was also leaving behind the nightmare her life had become. Helen's house was everything Maya had imagined it would be: warm, welcoming, and filled with the kind of love that had been missing from her life for so long. Helen's husband, Robert, greeted Maya with a gentle smile and helped carry her belongings to the guest room that would be her new home. "This room has its own bathroom," Helen explained, "and you're welcome to decorate it however you'd like. We want you to feel comfortable here for as long as you need to stay." Maya sat on the bed, looking around at the clean, cheerful room with its soft yellow walls and comfortable furniture. There were no chore lists taped to the walls, no schedule of impossible demands, no fear of criticism for every small mistake. "What happens now?" Maya asked. Jessica, who had followed them to Helen's house, pulled out a folder thick with legal documents. "Now we wait for the legal process to unfold. Richard will have a chance to respond to our claims. But given the evidence we've gathered, his options are limited. More importantly, we start rebuilding your life." Over the next several hours, Jessica explained Maya's immediate future. She would continue living with Helen and Robert while the legal proceedings continued. She would return to school in the fall as a senior, with additional tutoring to help bring her grades back up to college preparatory standards. Most importantly, she would begin seeing a counselor who specialized in helping teenagers recover from traumatic family situations. "The hardest part might be learning to trust your own judgment again," Jessica warned gently. "When someone has controlled and criticized you for so long, it takes time to remember who you really are underneath all that damage." Maya nodded, understanding exactly what Jessica meant. After months of being told she was lazy, ungrateful, and worthless, Maya had begun to believe those lies. Rebuilding her self-confidence would be just as important as recovering her college fund. That evening, Maya sat at Helen's kitchen table eating a home-cooked meal she hadn't prepared herself. Robert had made his famous spaghetti and meatballs, and Helen had insisted that Maya's only job was to enjoy it. The simple act of being served a meal instead of serving others felt almost revolutionary. Helen laughed softly. "The only thing you need to do tonight is rest. Tomorrow we'll start talking about getting you enrolled in some fun summer activities. Maybe a part-time job where you actually get paid, or some volunteer work that interests you. What did you used to enjoy doing before?" "Before my mother died," Maya finished. It felt good to say the words without shame or fear. "I used to love reading, and I was in the drama club at school. I even had the lead role in our spring play, but I had to quit after Mom got sick." "Well," Robert said with a smile, "it sounds like we need to get you back involved in theater. Helen was quite the actress in her younger days." As Maya prepared for bed that night, she looked at herself in the bathroom mirror for the first time in months without seeing Richard's criticism reflected back at her. The dark circles under her eyes were already beginning to fade, and her shoulders no longer carried the weight of constant stress. Maya pulled her mother's wedding ring from her jewelry box. Helen had helped her retrieve it from Richard's safe that morning and slipped it onto her finger. For the first time since her mother's death, Maya felt connected to the woman who had raised her to believe in her own worth and potential. "I did it, Mom," Maya whispered to her reflection. "I found my way back to the life you wanted for me." Tomorrow would bring new challenges as Maya learned to live as a free teenager again. There would be legal proceedings to navigate, therapy sessions to attend, and the difficult work of rebuild. 2 years later, Maya stood on the stage of her high school auditorium, wearing a cap and gown that represented so much more than academic achievement. As the valedictorian of her graduating class, she had been asked to give a speech to her fellow students and their families. But Maya knew her real audience was much larger. It included every teenager who felt trapped, every young person who had been told they weren't worth the investment, and every survivor who wondered if healing was possible. The transformation hadn't happened overnight. The first few months at Helen's house had been a careful dance of learning to trust again. Maya would wake up expecting to hear Richard's demands, only to remember that her biggest responsibility was getting to school. On time, she would finish homework and then sit idle, unsure what to do with free time she hadn't experienced in over a year. Dr. Sarah Chen, the therapist Jessica had recommended, helped Maya understand that recovery from psychological abuse was like physical therapy after a serious injury. Just as broken bones needed time and careful exercise to regain strength, Maya's sense of self-worth needed gentle rebuilding and consistent reinforcement. "You've been living in survival mode for so long," Dr. Chen explained during one of their early sessions. "Now we need to teach you how to thrive again." The legal proceedings against Richard had concluded 6 months after Maya's escape. The evidence was overwhelming, and Richard's attorney had advised him to accept a plea agreement rather than face a public trial. He was sentenced to community service, mandatory anger management classes, and full restitution of Maya's college fund, plus interest. More importantly, for Maya's peace of mind, the restraining order remained in effect, and Richard was prohibited from attempting any contact with her. Recovering her college fund had been a turning point that went beyond the financial relief. When Saporsi, Maya saw the bank statement showing her account balance, larger than she had remembered due to accumulated interest. She finally understood that her future was back in her own hands. Helen and Robert had become more than temporary guardians. They had become family. The legal process of becoming Maya's official foster parents was completed by Christmas of her senior year, giving Maya the stability and security she needed to focus on rebuilding her academic performance. With Mrs. Patterson's continued support and additional tutoring, Maya's grades climbed steadily throughout her senior year. She not only recovered from the academic damage of her ordeal, but excelled beyond her previous achievements. Her essay about overcoming adversity earned her recognition in a national writing contest, and her improved grades qualified her for several academic scholarships. Maya had also rediscovered her love of theater, earning starring roles in both the fall and spring productions. Standing on stage, embodying different characters and telling their stories, helped Maya reconnect with parts of herself that Richard had tried to destroy. The confidence she projected as Lady Macbeth, or Emily, Webb gradually became part of her real-world personality. Perhaps most importantly, Maya had learned to form healthy relationships again. Her friendship with Emma, which had suffered during the dark period with Richard, was slowly rebuilt on a foundation of honesty about what Maya had experienced. Emma's loyalty and understanding helped Maya trust that not all relationships required her to sacrifice her own needs. Maya had also begun dating Mark, a classmate who treated her with the respect and kindness she was learning to expect from others. Their relationship was gentle and patient, allowing Maya to experience teenage romance without the fear and anxiety that had characterized her interactions with Richard. Now, as Maya approached the podium to deliver her valedictorian speech, she thought about how different this moment was from what she had expected 2 years earlier. Then she had been a broken girl who believed her dreams were permanently out of reach. Today, she was a confident young woman with acceptance letters to 3 prestigious universities and a clear vision for her future. "Fellow graduates, families, and faculty," Maya began, her voice carrying clearly through the auditorium's sound system. "Today marks the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. But I want to talk about what happens between chapters." Those difficult transitions that test our strength and force us to discover who we really are. Maya looked out at the audience, spotting Helen and Robert in the third row, beaming with pride. Behind them sat Mrs. Patterson, Dr. Chen, and Jessica, all of whom had played crucial roles in Maya's recovery. Even Officer Martinez was there, having followed Maya's progress through the years. 2 years ago, I thought my story was over before it had really begun. I believed that circumstances beyond my control had written my ending for me. I was wrong. What I learned is that we are not just characters in stories that happen to us. We are the authors of our own lives, even when it doesn't feel that way. Maya spoke about resilience without mentioning the specific details of her abuse. She talked about the importance of asking for help, the power of education to transform lives, and the responsibility each person has to lift up others who are struggling. Her words were carefully chosen to inspire without exploiting her own trauma. For dramatic effect, some of you may be facing challenges that feel insurmountable right now. Some of you may feel like your dreams are impossible or that you don't deserve the future you've imagined for yourself. I'm here to tell you that you are wrong about that. Every single person in this room has unlimited potential, regardless of where you've come from or what obstacles you've faced. Maya's voice grew stronger as she reached the heart of her message. The most important lesson I've learned is that healing is possible, growth is always an option, and it's never too late to reclaim your story. The adults in your life who support your dreams, the teachers who see your potential, the friends who stand by you during difficult times. These people are not just being kind. They're recognizing something real and valuable in you. As Maya concluded her speech, the audience rose in enthusiastic applause. She had managed to deliver a message of hope and empowerment without turning her personal trauma into a spectacle. The standing ovation wasn't just for her academic achievements, but for the courage and grace she had shown in rebuilding her life. After the ceremony, Maya was surrounded by classmates, teachers, and family members offering congratulations and best wishes for her college years. She would be attending State University in the fall, majoring in education with a minor in social work. Her plan was to become a high school English teacher, just like Mrs. Patterson, but also to work with teenagers who had experienced family trauma. Helen approached Maya as the crowd began to thin out. "Your mother would be so proud of you today," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Not just because of your academic success, but because of the woman you've become." Maya hugged Helen tightly, understanding that her recovery had been possible only because of the older woman's willingness to see a stranger's potential and invest in it without expecting anything in return. "Thank you for saving my life," Maya whispered. "No, sweetheart," Helen replied firmly. "Thank you for having the courage to let us help you save yourself." That evening, Maya sat in her room at Helen's house, which had truly become her home, working on thank you notes to the many people who had supported her journey. She paused at her desk, looking at the acceptance letter from State University that was proudly displayed on her bulletin board. In the fall, Maya would begin the next chapter of her story as a college freshman with a full scholarship, a clear career goal, and most importantly, an unshakable understanding of her own worth. The girl who had once been treated like a slave had not only escaped her circumstances, but had transformed them into the foundation for a life dedicated to helping others. Maya picked up a photo of her mother that sat on her nightstand, the same photo she had clung to during her darkest moments with Richard. "I kept my promise, Mom," she said softly. "I remembered that I was worth so much more than anyone told me. And now I'm going to spend my life helping other kids remember the same thing." The story that had begun with tragedy and trauma had become one of triumph and transformation. Maya had learned that while we cannot always control what happens to us, we always have the power to choose what we do next. And Maya's choice was to use her experience to light the way for others walking through their own darkness toward freedom.